I'm delighted to welcome you to the 2024 edition of the Ananke Literary Festival, and in particular, this panel from the Whole Kahani, from page to community. Just to tell you a little bit about us, the Whole Kahani is a collective of British fiction writers of South Asian origin. Reshma, Ruia and I co-founded the group back in 2011 to provide a rich creative perspective that straddles cultures and boundaries and also reflects the contemporary world, the world we live in. As a group, we are unique, in Britain anyway, because we collaborate, workshop and publish collectively. Our 3 anthologies are published by independent presses in the UK, and our books are Love Across a Broken Map, May We Borrow Your Country, if you bear with me, Tongues and Bellies. Our group includes fiction writers, poets and screenwriters, all with individual writing careers and many with an array of awards. So today on this panel, we have myself, Kavita, we have Reshma, Mona Dash, and Nadia Barb. Our group provides an experimental and supportive space for writers like us who are bilingual or trilingual and simultaneously inhabiting 2 or 3 different cultures, as people in the diaspora do. We allow ourselves the freedom to write about the world with a 360-degree perspective, which is anything, anywhere, anytime, and indeed, everything, everywhere, all at once. Reshma, do you want to add a little bit more about our group?
Yes, again, it's a real honor to be on this, to participate in this literary festival. And I echo Kavita's sentiments. I'd like to add also that as a collective, our aim is really to challenge the myth of a singular Asian voice. There's regional cultural variety and depth in our literary voices and journeys. And this is what the Whole Kahani as a collective does. And also we don't, even though we aim to be a South Asian collective, we don't want to be seen as representatives or ambassadors of our particular heritage. I think like writers everywhere of every ilk and color, our aim is really to explore the meaning of what it means to be human in all its messy, sort of imperfect glory. And of course, it's a unique collaborative example of and its durability, really. We started in 2011, as Kavita mentioned. It's a testament to mutual respect, friendship, and a healthy working environment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so one question we're often asked is, what are the benefits of being part of a writers' collective? I mean, I don't know if people ask us about difficulties, but we're not going to go into that there. What we want to know from Nadia and Mona is their experience of being in the collective. Do you want to... Nadia?
Thank you, Kavita. I think, as we all know, writing is a solitary profession, and it can be quite a lonely place to be. It's not exactly like a group sport or group activity. So it can be very lonely at times, sitting by yourself on your computer, writing away. But I think being part of the Whole Kahani is wonderful because it's like having my own little small writing community. And as you both said, we really do. We have it's unique in the sense we have this unique structure where we have monthly meetings, we have agendas, and we workshop each other's work, And I think try to get that kind of critique from fellow writers is just priceless, and it's something that I personally value very much, And actually something some people ask me all the time is, oh, does it hinder your writing because you're writing with a group or a collective? And to be honest, it's quite the contrary, because to be honest, if you take just the 4 of us here, apart from, I think, being British South Asians, we are completely different in, I think, as writers, we're different as writers, and starting from the characters we portray, our styles of writing, the themes we choose to write about. I mean, there's an immense diversity within the group. And I think that even if we were given the same subject to write about, we'd actually come at it from different perspectives, which you can see from the anthologies that, you know, all our stories are different despite having common themes. And I think that's how you grow as a writer, by reading work that is different to yours, you know, and it's like a built-in safety net. For me, at least, I love it. You know, it's a support group. And one of the best things is that we actually are friends and we get on with each other and we actually socialize with each other. You know, we get to experiment and explore in a safe space where I know I won't be judged for submitting something which is maybe at its completely embryonic stage. And I think that to me is something I really value as part of this collective.
Well said, Nadia. Mona, you want to talk a little bit about being in the collective?
Yeah, I mean, I've got sort of similar thoughts to what Nadia said, but I think that, you know, any writer really benefits from writing a group as such, because there's always that feedback and exchange of ideas and kind of having that community. So I think, you know, that's something, a normal writing group itself is great. But when I joined the Whole Kahani, I think that's what I came to join. I thought, well, this is a writers group. I did know that we are going to be publishing work, and that was like the, you know, sort of the extra thing the group would bring. But I feel that, you know, I actually have benefited in ways I didn't actually imagine at that time or envision at that time, and in very different ways. I think one of the strongest things, of course, is the strong friendship which we've all built up, and which Nadia also mentioned. It's kind of this, you know, sort of safe and comfortable space to be in. So I think that's definitely something I hadn't sort of thought about, obviously, when I joined a few years back. And the second part of it is, if you're writing different things, like, you know, I think most of us are actually over here, like a novel and poetry. Like novels obviously take up a lot of time. Poetry tends to be kind of even more personal. So I just love the fact that with the Whole Kahani, I can focus on short stories, you know, and that's something which I really enjoy doing. So I think where our focus has been more on short stories as a medium, and that's something which I think the group also brings very effectively with the 3 anthologies being published. So yeah, so I think that's something special about it.
We said we'd talk a little bit about our 2 most recent anthologies. So I'm going to talk a little bit about May We Borrow Your Country, which actually I've remembered something from Mona said. It's short stories and some poetry. Yeah. And then Tongues and Bellies, Reshma will tell us a little bit about that. And that was just short stories. So with May We Borrow Your Country, we're going to talk about the narrative themes and how we came up with them. And I would say that when we started, we really started with the universal experience of displacement. And I mean that both physically and emotionally. As the others have said, we write very differently. So we all took that feeling and went away and did very different pieces. And, you know, you can be displaced, I think, because of the title, which I'll come to in a minute, and because of us being who we are, people assumed we were talking about migration and only migration, but in fact we weren't. That old potato, hot potato, pressing issue, whatever you call it, of course works its way into everything. But in the stories in this book, you can be displaced moving to somewhere within your own country. So in my story in the book, for example, a young woman in Hyderabad moves to the old city, having always lived in a different part of Hyderabad, and she is discombobulated both physically and emotionally. One thing I'd like to say about the title is we definitely had an ambiguous title without a question mark, and there was a reason for that, not the reason that people thought it would. You know, people have been moving for thousands of years in the world, and they all, every time you go somewhere, whether you go from home to work, you put on a new face, a new identity. So that's all part of the being a different person in a different space. But of course, they thought we meant the South Asians coming in and saying, "May we borrow your country?" to Britain. And we were jokingly, and we were also harking back to the past and history and saying, you know, maybe the British said this, not so politely, "May we borrow your country?" And not just the British, obviously, colonialism in many forms in many parts of the world. So that was really what I wanted to say about the book, that the pieces all talk about this dislocation, but in their own way. I don't know, Nadia, if you want to talk about how Tongues and Bellies came about. And
oh, is it me or
Reshma?
It's Reshma.
Sorry, yeah. Yeah, so again, what you probably have noticed that the Whole Kahani as a collective, we specialize in eye-catching titles. Maybe Borrow Your Country's definitely, evoked a lot of positive response. And similarly with our latest anthology, Tongues and Bellies, I think there was, it was a democratic sort of argument about, discussion really, about how should we talk about food. So tongues is the food as a sensory experience, and belly as a source of nourishment, probably, maybe that was the logic in a roundabout way. But really food plays a central role in the narrative in these stories, and indeed in our life. It's and emotions and who we are. Of course, food is never only just about food. It can be a metaphor for so many things. It conjures up home, belonging, memory. It can fill a void of loneliness, be a substitute for love, or be an act of revenge as well. And I think the stories in this collection pick up on all these themes in ways that are surprising and exciting. And there, again, my story in particular uses food. There are two stories this collection, but the one that I'll read an excerpt from uses a birthday cake as a tool of revenge.
Thank you. So yeah, sticking with Maybe Borrow Your Country and Tongues and Bellies, I want to ask Mona, how did you interpret these themes, well, for Maybe Borrow Your Country that we came across, that we actually came up with, and did it come to you naturally to fit the stories in that theme?
Yeah, I mean, see this whole theme about kind of identity and belonging and some of the themes we have explored. I think this is something which I really love to explore, and I've done this in a different lot of my writing. So I was kind of and as you know, there's sort of short stories and poetry in this. So I sort of looked at it from different ways. I think in one of these stories, which is Natural Accents, I've explored belonging, which comes more from a language or more specifically accent. So this is a very self-sufficient and independent person, but even then there is a little bit of her which still thinks that maybe I don't fully belong just because she's not speaking the way people are expecting her. So that's one exploration. In the second story, which is called This Can Be Mine, which is what I'll read about, it looks at, and again, it's diversity of belonging. It's not that every Indian feels exactly the same way about how they belong. So there we have Sonal, who's just come to the UK, and her belonging is very different from the sense of the belonging for the person she is working for, who's called Rinal Patel, and she has a much more different sort of confident approach. And in the poetry, I'm sort of exploring intersectionality and kind of different identity or hybrid identities and how that can contribute to belonging. So that's the way I sort of looked at the theme, kind of looking from a more 360-degree way.
Mm-hmm.
And Nadia, with Tongues and Bellies, we had the themes beforehand and we came up with a title later. So when you were writing the stories, it was more about emotions. Food and emotions were sort of bigger, broader picture themes. And how did you find, were your pieces already going in that direction, or did you have to move them in that direction to fit into the anthology, really?
Well, before I say anything, I have to tell people that, as I think Reshma mentioned, we do run a democracy at the Whole Kahani, and we do a lot of voting. There's polling and voting, and which at times is let's just say quite amusing, And I think especially for Tongues and Belly, the process for finding the title was much longer than Maybe Borrow Your Country. That one was just, it came and everybody was, happy with it. But we had so many suggestions before Tongues and Bellies. And then we went through our, democratic process and we came up with this, So actually it was interesting because it worked very well for, I think, my stories, especially one of them, because they're also one of the things that Tongues and Bellies deals with is food, but also secrets and lies and also identity. I think that's a central theme in a lot of our anthologies. And what I thought about was that, we use our tongues for tasting and we use it for talking. We use it for telling the truth. We tell it for telling lies, you know. And in Bangladesh, we have something, you know, that we say that we keep our secrets in our bellies. And so, you know, if you have pet patla, which means thin bellies, metaphorically speaking, of course, you know, it means that you can't keep a secret, you know, you're bad at keeping secrets, or, you know, you give them away. And so that was something which I thought worked really well with The Connoisseur, which is one of my stories. And basically, food is an integral part of who we are and our identity. You know, it could be our cultural identity, it could be our religious identity, and it's the food that we grow up with. It's, you know, the food that we grow up eating. It's comfort food, what's familiar to us. You know, for example, our mother's cooking or your grandmother's cooking, or a certain type of food that, you know, you go back to. And it reminds us of people and places. And in my story, The Connoisseur, my protagonist, Shamim, finds that through biryani. And the story is not just about food, but it's also about secrets, lies, and identity. And what I have to add here is that, you know, biryani also plays a central part in this story. It is one of the main characters. You know, we take our biryani very seriously. And similarly, the story, you know, Stranger in the Mirror, deals with a secret, you know, how it feeds into this insecurity of a young man. So, you know, it really, I think I was really happy how actually the title, ultimately, when we chose Tongues and Bellies, it really worked for my stories.
So we're going to talk a little bit about breaking stereotypes. And I think this is something Ananke Festival especially asked us to talk about, the topic of the challenges that we face being British fiction writers of South Asian origin. And as we said, we're straddling two or more worlds, and we're trying to break it, or not trying to, but always trying, and have broken into the publishing world. As Reshma said, we're myth busters in that, you know, not deliberately, but just by being who we are and doing our different things, and then doing them all together in one place, and not saying one story, we automatically are breaking those stereotypes of and the boxes that we're put in. But I'm wondering if each of you wants to just talk about these challenges and how we are facing and dealing and dealing with them within the publishing environment. Mona, would you like to go first?
Yeah, I think, you know, this is a really interesting question, and we've all sort of talked about it. We were talking about this, you know, latest movie, American Fiction, which was also bringing such issues out into the sort of open. And I think that's what it is, because the expectation still remains about what is really expected from a South Asian or any I don't know if that's the right word to say, sort of non-mainstream writer. There could be any race or, you know, kind of gender or whatever, but anybody not non-mainstream, there's an expectation that that's what they're meant to write. Whereas what we want to write could be different. And that gap, I think, is still there. And that's what I think, which we probably all have seen. I mean, I can take a quick example of my memoir, Roll of the Dice, which you all know about, which is about motherhood and science and genetics and love and faith, which are very universal themes. But it's written by me, obviously, which is, you know, kind of South Asian, British, Indian writer. And I think the reaction was really very interesting, because we had an Asian magazine who kind of didn't want to run an extract of it, because they said it's not really an Asian theme. And you're like, right, motherhood is universal, however, it is also Asian. And then there was, I think, a friend was trying to get something in the Guardian, and they said, well, we've run so many things on motherhood, so we don't think this fits anymore, because we've run this similar things about motherhood. And she said, but this is written by an Asian, South Asian or an Indian, and have you run something exactly like this? And they were like, no, but it doesn't matter. So I think those are the kind of, you know, sort of situations which we still probably face, that where do we, I mean, can we write universal themes, or we can't? And, you know, that's what the challenge remains.
Yeah. So, you know, it comes back to the two Asian, not Asian enough. Those
absolutely. Yeah.
But Reshma, that's how we met.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's one size fits all, one label. But just sort of talking about the commercial world of publishing, really, taking a look at that. I feel that, especially the big five or the mainstream publishers, they are not only commercial, they're very competitive and they're risk averse. And also the book as a medium is competing against so many other platforms, It's fighting against, it's competing for people's attention vis-a-vis Netflix, YouTube, cinema. So it can't afford to take too many risks. And this, in a way, I feel dictates how it views South Asian writing. And I just going back, I'm generalizing a bit, but sometimes I feel that there's a grain of truth in generalizations. I think publishers are usually drawn to narratives that, in a way, perpetuate certain stereotypes. So, echoing what Mona said, for instance, caste, arranged marriage, or a nostalgic look at the empire. And of course, the South Asian experience has been shaped by the colonial past and certain cultural and social norms, but it's a much more complex and multi-layered world that we want to present. And what I found in my own personal experience as a writer and also within the collective is that it's indie publishers, independent publishers, who, even though they don't have deep pockets, they are willing to champion these new kinds of narratives from new voices. And our 3 anthologies have been published by indie presses. Linen Press has published Tongues and Bellies and Maybe Borrow Your Country. And Love Across a Broken Map was published by Dahlia Publishing. So there's hope, but it is an uphill struggle, really, to gain a foothold in the industry. There are too many gatekeepers. And I hate to say that sometimes established South Asian writers can also be gatekeepers in a way. They guard their home turf. It pains me to say this, but there is not much solidarity or helpfulness within the writing community.
Yeah, definitely.
Nadia, you want to talk a little bit about your experience?
Yeah, I think I actually echo both of what you said. I think the problem is that sometimes we are kind of lumped together as some part of a greater amorphous umbrella or collective. And I think homogenizing such a diverse group, whether it's South Asian or whatever the group is actually kind of into one category is really quite reductive. And I think it strips us of our individual identity. And I think the beauty of diversity is the individual kind of or personal experiences and unique perspectives that we actually bring with us, and, the fact that we're quite frequently, in fact, mostly pigeonholed into, as you said, conforming to stereotype of a race or ethnicity or, community, and I think at times it is white stereotyping. So it's what is expected of us and from us, which we have to battle with quite a lot as South Asian writers. And even within this collective, we have different cultural backgrounds and different sensibilities, which is why our writing is so different. We don't all have a shared experience. And so, so I think that makes us all unique. And I understand that publishers want to make our writing marketable, but I don't want it to the extent where it's being whitewashed or exoticized, and I think I remember there was one short story, and exactly like you, Mon, it was sort of, but it's not Asian enough. My female character it was living in London. It's not Asian enough. It's the whole isn't, or, it's too much or isn't enough. Exactly. And I think what we really need is for the publishers to level the playing field. I really think that they need to give us an equal opportunity to tell our stories, and let the writing speak for itself. And I think readers are far more discerning than they're given credit for, to be honest. I think, if we show them this type of writing, I think they will sort of engage with it, and I think, like you said, the larger publishers are a little more hesitant to take that risk, whereas independent publishers are more willing to do so. So I think we just need to be given that kind of spot now to write what we want to write, not what's expected of us.
Very good points, Nadia. Thank you. Well, you brought up 2 or 3 things in my head, and I think one of them is this explanation that the 3 of you have given is what we are constantly explaining to the publishers. I mean, Ananke Festival has given us the chance to sort of talk about it here, but this is the explanation we're constantly giving to publishers. That's the first thing, and they require that explanation. And that's through no fault of anything other than sometimes them being lazy and sometimes needing the explanation. The second point, Nadia, is also which you said, and Reshma also said about the non-mainstream, is that lots of times people will say to me, well, there are so many Asian writers or Indian writers, and so had this big spread. It's so in the New York Times or so and so. So what do you all, why are you complaining? And of course, the thing is, I say, hey, we're not. This is all great. But I'm not saying to you, oh, a person from Dulwich had a big spread in the New York Times. What are you complaining about? So where, the representation. So one of my bugbears is when I'm asked this question is that, of course, it's improving, and we are in the forefront of making it improve. And in fact, other collectives have come behind us. But the thing is, if we are 9% of the population, say, there aren't 9% of us being published. And sometimes I've had people ask me, and this is where it gets into that range of, whether someone is what they call unconscious bias, because as I've been said is, but not 9% of you, no, you may not have the same percentage of people who are writers. And I'm like, no, we do. We do. In every language, in our other 36 languages, we will have the same percentage of people who are writers or want to be writers as they are in any other community or language in the world. So that is another explanation point, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
I think, so, but I mean, this is what we're dealing with, but we're making it happen, which is the big
and
thing.
going back to just picking up on that, expanding on that point, even I think moving from book publishers, even bookshops, they don't know where to place our writing. So for instance, with our first anthology, Love Across a Broken Map, there was one particular mainstream publisher who, a bookshop rather, who placed it right in the dark corner in an alcove where it was sort of Asian, as the Asian corner, so to speak, and it wasn't there, or along with other sort of literature, it wasn't taking its rightful place.
So actually, yes. So having said that, as Reshma pointed out in the beginning, publishing is of course a business. So we do need a lot of people to buy the books, because that is also what makes the publishers, small and big, wake up. So people do have to support us, not just by saying, yes, do what you're doing, but they also have to buy the books. But now let's talk about another question we're always asked, which is, what are our future plans for the Whole Kahani? And of course, we have a lot of projects and ideas in our head, but we can only drill down into a couple of things. So, Reshma, are you going to tell us a little bit about maybe our future plans?
Yeah, it's all is not doom and gloom. I know we painted a very pessimistic picture of the publishing landscape, but as we've all said that there are cracks in the ceiling, in the glass ceiling, and we are very much, wanting to break that. And we are, as a collective, we are going from strength to strength. We had a bit of a lull, as did most of the world during COVID, but we are back to in-person meetings now. I mean, we did have sort of online a support group during COVID, and we are now working on our next anthology, and it's going to be quite different from what we have worked on before. Without giving any spoilers, it might sort of veer into the crime genre or something. So watch this space. And we, of course, are always looking for more visibility. And, it's festivals like yourselves that give us a platform. And we would love to, we are all fairly mobile, and we are happy to do sort of virtual participation and in person as well. And also we are open to new members who can show consistency and who sort of follow our broad sort of membership requirements. And for that, our website is there. So if you are interested, if there are any writers who are based in London or who are mobile, who can travel to London, please do look at our website and send us your work.
Thank you, Reshma. Do you want to add anything, Nadia, about the future, or can we go on?
I think for me, Reshma, I think you've said it all.
Yeah, watch this space, as she said. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to have a very, very brief readings of excerpts from our stories, and that's just to give you a little bit of a taster of what's in these anthologies. And I think we're starting with, are we starting with you, Reshma, for the...
I'm not sure, I don't have the running order, but...
Do you want to start?
Yeah, okay. So I'm going to read from our latest anthology, Tongues and Bellies. Okay. And I've had two stories, but the one I'm reading from is called Meg Kowalski's Birthday Cake. In this story, I've subverted the notion of food as a source of comfort and celebration. And the birthday cake in question becomes a weapon of revenge and for getting even. It's basically just a backstory. It's about, the story is about a marriage and betrayal, and the main narrator, Meg, discovers that her husband is having an affair. And this is how she sort of exacts revenge. Today, on my 40th birthday, with my mother dead and gone, I bake myself a birthday cake. I drive to Waitrose and load my trolley with organic flour, a dozen eggs, and all the nutty, fruity trimmings to make the perfect cake. I have my mother's recipe memorized back to front. 3 hours later, and the cake is ready in all its jiggly glory. Just before the cake is ready to go into the oven, I slip off my gold wedding band and place it right inside the wobbly heart of the cake. I throw a tablecloth on the kitchen table, light the candelabra, and wear my sequin party frock. I crown my lips in scarlet lipstick and tease my red hair into an artful mess. Sitting at the table, ready to feast, my mother's words come floating back. There's no need to be greedy. I must share this cake with those who need it most. Gently, I ease the cake into a box, tie it with a silver ribbon, and drive across town to the hotel near the airport. It's easy to find him. Like most lecturers in medieval philosophy, my husband Bill doesn't stray far from truth. The room is booked under his own name. A special birthday delivery, I show the harassed receptionist. She waves me towards the lift. I knock on the door of room 215 and shout, "Room service." There's sunshine in my voice. A young girl wearing a toweling robe opens the door and sticks her head out. Her mascara has left footprints over her cheek, and her curly hair is a tangle. "Hello, young lady. I've got you some goodies," I say. "We didn't order anything," she says in a high-pitched voice. "Well, I think your boyfriend did." It's easy enough to push her aside. She's featherlight. I walk in, carrying my cake like a crown. The room stinks of second-rate love. There lies my husband, propped up against polyester pillows on the bed, his pale thighs and face flushed in postcoital bliss. His corduroy trousers are draped neatly on the back of a chair, and the girl's lacy bra lies on top of his belt. "What, Meg, what the hell are you doing?" he shouts. His droopy eyes sink down further, making him look like a cartoon. His hands rush down to pull up the beige check duvet to cover his nakedness. "Just thought I'd share my birthday cake with you. It's my 40th, and you naughty boy, you forgot." I tweak his cheek affectionately and place the cardboard box on the bedside table and bring out the cake. Bill's eyes move from the cake to my face. His mouth opens and shuts like a door, but no sound comes out. "Should I call security?" the girl whispers, reaching for the phone, but I'm quicker than her. I yank the telephone from its plug socket and fling it across the room. Thank you.
Nadia, will you read from one of your stories?
Yes, I thought I would read from Tongues and Bellies, and I would read Stranger in the Mirror. And this is a story which I mentioned about a young man whose parents have just died in an accident, and he finds a photograph which starts him on this journey of doubt and suspicion, and he starts questioning everything that he thought was his reality. So this is Stranger in the Mirror. The photograph on the table showed a slender young woman in a blue floral shirt and jeans, gazing up at the man next to her, a smile on her lips. The man was laughing, his head tilted back, arm resting on her shoulder. There was something intimate about the way she was looking at him. I felt like a voyeur, an intruder. The woman, my mother, looked carefree, vibrant, and most importantly, happy, an emotion I had only seen in bursts and flashes. I remembered a woman whose smile didn't quite reach her eyes, a sadness in them I had never entirely understood. I placed the photo face down on the table and rubbed my temple. The image of the two of them was seared into my brain. There was an inscription on the back written in a bold hand, though the ink had faded over time. Always yours, Adam. The man in the picture wasn't my father. He was a curly-haired man with dark eyebrows over smiling hazel eyes. If I hadn't gone into my parents' bedroom after the funeral, I would never have found the photograph. It had slipped from my hand, and the back of the frame had coming loose when it fell on the floor. The photograph had been tucked inside. It was strange to think that more than 6 weeks had passed since the accident. When I arrived at the hospital, the woman at the reception had directed me where to go. The doctor who spoke to me had the careworn face of someone who had seen too much pain and suffering. He informed me that a lorry had skidded on the motorway and ploughed into their car. My mother had been killed instantly by the impact, and my father hadn't regained consciousness after the crash. I'm very sorry for your loss, Mr. Rashid. The information had been imparted with just the right balance of sympathy and calm. It was clearly not the first time he had given this kind of speech. My legs buckled. The doctor steadied me and led me to a chair. DOA, dead on arrival. And with those 3 words, I was an orphan. Arguably, orphan was a term that could no longer be applied to me. After a certain age, you cease to be an orphan and become parentless. At the age of 24, however, orphaned is exactly how I felt. Losing both parents at the same time was something I never imagined I would have to confront. Identifying them was a cold and impersonal process, incongruous with how I felt. The sight of their lifeless bodies is an image I will never be able to erase. For days, I walked around in a fog, my brain numb. Thank you.
Mona, will you read something for us next?
Yes, yeah. So I'll read from Maybe Borrow Your Country. And I'll read the sort of second story I have here, which is called This Can Be Mine. And I actually haven't read much from this, which is why I wanted to read this one. And it's about a young woman called Sonal, who's come to England. She's like a cleaner in another person's house, and she's sort of struggling with miscarriage, which she just had. So I'm just reading from the kind of end, the last bit actually. Sonal walks around the main shrine, touching the base of the deities enshrined on the wall. At the Sri Lakshmi alcove, she dips her forefinger into the vermilion red and marks the center of her clavicle. Her mother has suggested she do a puja, a ritual to calm Sarda, the village goddess whose anger has been irked and who destroys little ones in the womb. Reena Ben's puja is over. She's ready to leave. Thanks, Sonal, and you'll be fine going back on your own, isn't it? I'll see you next week at the house, all right? Yes, I'll be fine. See you next week. But Reena Ben hasn't walked around the Navagraha, the 9 planets. She doesn't seem to know. You have to circle them with brisk steps, either 3 times or 7. Leaving the temple without a prayer for the planets isn't good luck. She wonders if she should call her back, but Reena Ben is probably driving away fast, speaking to her husband and planning an evening out. In Baroda, the Shiva temple was at the end of the road, the path to it often slushy, so that her sandal was always caked with damp mud. She went there every Monday. It smelled thickly of stale flowers and incense. The paduka they offered there was a light liquid, sticky on the palm, which you licked. Here, in the London temple, they don't offer it. And they're careful that flowers don't stick on the temple floor. The temple is clean, almost antiseptic. Sonal walks to the tube, district line to Plaster. From there, she'll take a bus to Sidcup. A young man, a Gora, sits opposite her, smiling faintly while he looks at his phone, fingers moving fast on the screen, a white dimple on his cheek. When he leans forward, Sonal catches the smell of faint cigarette smoke. Perhaps she has made a sound, because he looks up and smiles briefly at her. His eyes seem kind, such a clear blue. Back home, the fairer you are, the more handsome or beautiful you are considered. Light eyes belong to the truly blessed. She finds herself looking at his hands and his clean, well-groomed nails. Her own seem tired, and she notices haldi stains. She imagines his hands on hers. She imagines him asking her how she is. She imagines him telling her that the formed, unformed being in her womb never knew that it wasn't wanted. Excuse me, he calls after her as she gets up. He's gesturing towards her scarf, lying on the seat which she's left, pink flowers studded on white. He holds it out to her and smiles. She mutters a thank you. Tears swell. On the platform, she looks back, wondering if he's looking back at her, but his head is bent, back in his own world. Everyone is in their own worlds, everyone belonging. She doesn't board the bus. Instead, she walks, first to the right, then the left, 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 right, right, left, right, until she doesn't know where she is. The city is alien. She keeps walking. Eventually, she will reach home. Thank you.
So I'm going to read also from May We Borrow Your Country, and I'm reading a story, a little bit actually, very little bit, from a story called Where He Lives. And like I mentioned before, it's about a young woman who moves to the old city in Hyderabad for love. I remember Riaz had so relished the high tea that he told the waiter, "We're definitely coming back." I didn't realize I was gazing into the distance as I walked and remembered. "You're dreaming about food, aren't you?" Sometimes he guesses what I'm thinking. "Shall we go back to the Palace Hotel for the Nawabi dinner for our anniversary?" He stops for a moment at the Bangal Bazaar junction. 13 courses. Remember that mouth-watering menu? He touches my elbow. "Let's not think about how many thousand rupees it costs. That's what you're dreaming of, right? That dinner?" Wrong. I'm dreaming of going to Goa one day. Although food is part of the dream if I take into account prawn curry. I stay silent. He walks on. "I'll need to eat something quick. I must return to the office soon. What should we share, Sabina?" "Nothing. I don't want to eat. I'm not hungry." My stomach clenches in disbelief at my words. He stops again. "You must eat lunch." "Don't tell me what to do. Do not tell me what I must do." "You told me you would adjust, remember? You insisted that you could. Don't remind me of my mistakes." I place my hand on his cheek. It lands as a light slap, half joking, half meant. My anger has bubbled out suddenly, taking me by surprise. We hear a camera click. A tourist has snapped the moment. Riaz looks at her. She's a few feet away on a side street under a shady awning. His face darkens. "You shame me in public, Begum." He crosses the road to a biryani stall, leaving me standing alone. I wait. He returns holding a paper plate heaped with vegetable rice and begins to eat, motioning to a spare fork. "Eat." "No." I know how I punish him. He deserves it. He would hop off back to his office. I would return to an afternoon of my mother-in-law's complaint. My life of restraints. We part at the next crossroads. I watch him for a few moments, tenderness and anger roiling in my heart. I realize he's not heading out of the old city. I call to him. He turns. "Why are you going that way?" He walks back. "I'm going to the flower stall. I want to see if he has anything interesting today." He can tell I'm beaming, even though my face is veiled. So that wraps up our readings and our session. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope you enjoyed the session, and we'd love you to look at our books, and you can get in touch with us either about the session or about the stories that you read. We have a website, as Reshma said. We're also on social media, and we are contactable by email through the website. I'd like to thank Ananke Festival very much for inviting us and giving us the opportunity to showcase our anthologies. It was great to be with you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
So much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.